thing that I love about working on food system transformation is that if you're considering coming and working with us in food, you'll find a community of people who have such strong values, but also such a deep desire to collaborate. And you might have heard this on a lot of stages over the last few days and few hours, but I can truly say that in every single venue I go to, there's such a desire to look at how can we work together in collective action to transform our food system, because each of us does make a difference. And one thing I think that's important to know as a consumer, and this is a little bit of a game, but how many different dishes do you think the average family cooks in rotation? Raise your hand if you think it's 50, that your family cooks like 50 dishes kind of once and again. Nobody for 50. Let's do 40. Anybody for 40? 30? Okay. 25? More. 20? Nice. 15? Okay. 10? Wow. 5? Are you guys speaking from your own honest experience of how many dishes you make? I love it. The average family cooks, on average, between 12 to 20 meals in rotation. And why that's really important is that the majority of our food system is built on 5 main animals and about 12 main crops that make up the majority of our calories. So when you're cooking the same dish every single night, it means that you're not creating that biodiversity in the food system. So one of those super simple actions you can take is just to cook something different, to switch it up, whether if it's a different cut of meat, a new vegetable, something you've never experienced before. And as you just heard from Dr. Christophe, so much of our work is really based on the idea that these solutions are simple. We're already doing them, we already have access to them. We just need to be encouraging and really thinking about where we're spending our dollar on a daily basis, because it's gonna make a huge change. So now we're going to bring to the stage 3 panelists who are really amazing luminaries in this space and can provide us with 3 different perspectives, from technology, investment, to science, of how do we look at changing the plate of the future and what's that gonna be. So let's give them a warm welcome. Yay, welcome to the stage. Come on up. So I'm going to introduce each of you and then also have you introduce your work a little bit at the same time. And we'll go ahead. I'm going to start with you, Gabriela. So you're a food nutrition engineer at YUKA. Does anyone use YUKA and know what it is? I love that. We love to see that adoption. So if you don't know YUKA, it's a really awesome app that helps people make smarter, healthier choices when it comes to food and cosmetics. And you do an amazing amount of work to help people understand the science going into that practical, accessible way when you're going to buy products, and understanding, like, what really am I doing when I buy this, and who am I supporting, and what ingredients are they putting into it? And from that point of view, we as a collective can then put pressure on manufacturers. So can you talk a little bit about, when you think of the plate of the future, what do you think it's going to be as your introduction?
Okay, so thank you for this introduction. So happy to be here. It's a really nice environment, really nice place. I think a healthy plate in the future, it would use 3 main criteria that actually we use also at YUKA. So in terms of nutrition, it's a balanced plate, where you can have, first of all, lots of veggies that's rich in fiber and also in protein, so plant protein mostly. Good source of lipids and carbohydrates, but also a plate that has less chemicals as possible. And when I talk about chemicals, I think we can talk about additives and also about pesticides. So a plate that is also mainly with ingredients that are from organic, because when we eat organic, we avoid not only pesticides, but also we have less contaminants, and also we have more antioxidants, which are really good for our health. So I think this is the healthy plate of the future.
And just as part of your intro, what is YUKA? If someone's never used it and is in the room, like, what does YUKA do?
Okay, so this is amazing app that helps consumers to make healthier choices for food and also for cosmetics. So it's really simple. It's an app that we can scan the barcode of products, and then we have a grade of the nutritional quality if it's a food product, and the quality if it's a cosmetic, so not in terms of nutrition, but in terms of ingredients. So we evaluate The products, the food products, with three main criteria. So 60% of the grade is based in the Nutri-Score. So maybe a couple of you have already seen Nutri-Score. In Europe, it's really used in a lot of products. And then this grade of Nutri-Score is based in proteins, in fibers, in content of sugar, of salt, of saturated fats. And then we have 30% of the grade, which is based in the additive part. So we have 4 levels of risk of additives. So we have additives that are more risky for our health. And then we have 10%, which is for the biological part, so organic products. So then they had A+ if they're organic.
Amazing, thank you. Christine. So you are the founder of Thought for Food and Giga. You come to the stage with a bit of the tech perspective, but you've also built the largest and most diverse innovative community in food and agriculture, reaching 30,000 next-gen talents in over 180 countries. And you've incubated over 100 startups, which have gone on to raise around $300 million in venture capital. So when you're looking at the plate of the future and how we as consumers can shape that, what do you see?
Thank you so much. And it's so amazing to see a full house here in a food and ag session. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I think a lot about the plate of the future. And of course, I can get weird and describe to you like these totally sci-fi, tech-enabled foods, like we're going to be eating pills or we're going to be drinking our foods. But I actually don't think that's what's going to transpire. I think the plate of the future is going to look very similar to the plates that we have today. Hopefully more diverse, though. I'm with you on diversifying, the crops that we eat and the types of meat that we eat, et cetera. But what is going to change is the hidden layer of innovation that is going to make the foods that we consume more sustainable, more nutritious, more delicious, and more economically empowering for the farmers, large and small, that bring them to our table. So it's really the innovation behind the scenes on how food is grown, how it's manufactured, how it's shipped. That's going to arrive on our plates and deliver a food experience that is going to be better than what we have today. It has to be better than what we have today. And what I'm doing now, as you mentioned with Thought for Food, I built this global community of entrepreneurs. We were helping them build these exciting, game-changing startups in every region of the world. And we were helping them to get their first investments and to, kind of do this shakeup of the food system that we need and that they really wanted. But what I saw time and time again was that the pathways for them to scale were not carved out. So with Giga, what we're building now is an enabling ecosystem for innovation to grow and take hold in the market. So we're working with startups, of course, that's, I have a big passion for this, but we're also working with investors, with corporate partners, and with governments to align incentives and really help this game-changing innovation get to the scale that it can make a difference. And so that's why the name Giga is actually here, because it's about giga scale. Like, we need to think and act in this way. We see it in AI, we see it in other, tech domains, but in food and ag, we still play small and incremental. I believe in the power of the smallholder, but I believe in the collective action that we can do to create giga scale change.
I'm going to leave that as a ... so we can come back and talk about the hidden layers underneath that goes beyond the plate and every step on that way, and go ahead and introduce you, Sagar. So you're the partner at Beyond Impact VC, a venture capital firm dedicated to investing in the future of food and materials innovation with a focus on sustainable animal alternatives. And you've led over 10 investments in early stage companies across synthetic biology, alternative proteins, and next generation materials. So we have another bit of an investor angle, but also very much an animal-based angle, an alternative materials angle from your point of view. When you look at the future plate and how we're shaping that as consumers, what do you see?
I think I'll build upon what Christine said about the hidden layer. And also I'll build upon what we were talking in the last slides about playing with nature. When you go to the nature, you play with soil. I would actually say that what we are trying to do and what we invest in some of these hidden layers of bioeconomy solution or these applied biotech companies, these life sciences companies, they are actually trying to tinker and work with microbes, with yeast. This is actually understanding how at a microbial level things work. We were fermenting to make beer. We can ferment to do something else. We can ferment to make it alcohol, we can ferment to make it proteins. And I think what I fundamentally very strongly believe, and that's the reason I joined Beyond Impact also as a partner, was that we can transition towards kinder, cleaner, healthier world. I don't see that there is only one sort of protein we need to resort to. We need to have protein diversification. But from where that protein comes from is a point of that can we make it much more kinder? And can we actually go back to the roots of understanding nature? To me, how I play with soil is how I want to play and understand how the microbes or the yeast works when I'm doing the fermentation. So I would actually argue that we need to think about a generation which is trying to understand the biology and the humanity and the animals and the biodiversity more deeply with the tools that we have.
Yeah.
And that makes me super excited, not about Frankenstein food, but more nature-based foods, honestly speaking.
I get goosebumps when we talk about this because it's so much looking 100 years into the future, imagining the next 7 generations, and how we keep this deeply humanistic, connected approach, because we are a part of the food system. So often we think of ourselves as being above, that we can control nature, that we're better than it, that we can domineer this food system, when in reality, we're just another part of the chain. And I think it's important for us to dive a little bit into the layers that exist behind just what we get on our plate. And I'll start with you, Sagar, in terms of just the presence of animals in the food system and how we built a food system that's highly reliant on animals. And it's not to say we want to remove them completely, but we should rethink where they're showing up and how. And that's a big focus of your work. So can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, it's the relationship with nature, the relationship with animals, the relationship that you have with your dogs, can you have with the other animals? It's the cognitive dissonance that you say in psychological terms. I'm not saying that you can achieve something that you can remove all the cognitive dissonance. In my recent essay and my reflection, actually you cannot. If you try to remove all your cognitive dissonance, you'll be depressed. So, but there needs to be some sort of balance to understand how nature and animals actually thinks, and some of the proteins that we actually get from them it's debatable. It's quite important for us. But is there a better way and a kinder way and a more sustainable way? Because the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and methane gas emission happen because of this. We really need to rethink how we produce these proteins and how we produce these proteins. That's the point. Like, those animal proteins are needed, but maybe from somewhere else.
And food is the mother of all markets. So when we're talking about food, you might be thinking just what we're eating, but when we're talking about how animals exist within the system overall, for example, a lot of cars use animal leather as opposed to an alternative leather. And there's a lot of startups, I know there's even some here, who are looking at how could we produce that differently, that when we're eating an animal, it's really for consumption by other animals versus for all other materials.
One very small example I'll leave everyone with is when you eat a cake or when you eat ice cream, you don't eat ice cream or cake because it has to have milk or eggs. You eat it for the sweetness and the affection that you have with some of these sweet items. And why you need eggs or milk? Because of some functionality that you need that to provide the consistency, emulsification, foaming and all. I think we can have much better bio solutions for this, and that's what I feel more excited about.
And Gabriela, you work so much with providing more transparency in the industry because most people have no idea what they're putting into their bodies and how food is made or the way that it's been manufactured at scale, at a giga scale in many conditions. So can you talk a little bit about the way that we see, or where you see the food system going in terms of it being cleaner and more transparent, and how we move away from so many chemical and pesticides in what we eat?
Okay. I think a turning point in history was where we started to have food that we didn't recognize anymore. I think it's kind of started war, because at that time, access to food was harder. And then a lot of chemicals were added to food because the priority at the moment was to have access to food, and we wanted to have food that lasted longer.
Yeah.
So we'd add a lot of things because the priority was to nourish ourselves. But then with time, I think they saw that they could add other things, that not just to have food that lasted longer, to have a better shelf of life, but They thought they could add things that get better taste, better texture, and actually to have more money with consumers. And we just added all these chemicals, and today we have products that we don't even know what they're eating. Like, we don't recognize. We have a list of ingredients that are enormous and with chemical names that we don't even recognize anymore. So we're really disconnected with the food that we eat. And we don't really even realize the number of additives that we consume every day. So that's why YUKA is such a powerful tool, because we try to make it simple. These labels, they're full of chemicals, and we translate it because it's normal to do not understand what is written if you didn't do a chemical or a nutrition formation, because it's chemistry and not food. So that's why I think it's so important to pay attention on what we're eating. Use tools like YUKA to have a simple information, because today we have so much information from social media, from everywhere. We just need fast and simple information to make healthier choices for our life.
Absolutely. I'm just getting a memory of going shopping with my grandma, and she wanted to buy everything from the frozen food section that she could prepare as an individual meal, because in the 50s and 60s, that's what she was eating, and that was the rise of this moment. And I literally was like, I didn't know people bought this. Like, I thought it stayed buried in the bottom of the freezer section, because who's eating it? But there's people that have those attachments too, and you get attached to those flavors. And that's why they often say agriculture is culture in the center, right? We're talking about changing something that's so much bigger, and technology is here to help us. So when you think about the hidden layers and everything you see in terms of enabling us to get there faster, to this level of connection in our food system, to this level of transparency, cleanliness, friendliness, what do you see supporting us on the way?
Well, I'd like to react to a couple of the points made. First of all, I think bringing transparency in an easy to understand way is fundamental. On top of that, I think it's about having food choices, because like you said, your grandmother, bought frozen foods. My mother did too. You can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the USA. And my mom, being, what she thought was an empowered woman, wanted the most convenient, quick, easy thing to cook and get her out of the kitchen. So I grew up eating that, and now there's a generational shift, and there's a lot of young people who really want to move away from that more convenience food, which is where I want to have a little bit of, because my background is in, by the way, synthetic biology and biotech. I am so for what you're doing. But I do think there are some people that are buying ice cream because of the eggs and milk. And that's the point. There are so many people who have different reasons for making the food choices that they're making. And so we need to bring optionality. And I think the chance that we have, that I loved your point on, was how we have the power now to redesign the food system. If we look at the industrial model that we've built today, it's been built because we were designing for a certain outcome, calories, right, and availability. Actually, there's a lot of criticism of the food system that we have, but if you think about it, it's working exactly as it was designed. We are getting more calories to people, right? But we have a lot of unintended consequences from designing that way. But if we think about the positive side of design, we say we have agency as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as investors, as corporate leaders to redesign the system. And technology gives us a new set of tools in the toolkit, because now we can look at the power of microorganisms to say, what if we can bioengineer this? By the way, I have an I Love GMO sticker on my thing, which I know probably is not going to go down well in this audience, but it's from a company called Ginkgo Bioworks, which is using the power of precision fermentation to solve all kinds of sustainability challenges across food and ag, biomaterials, and more. So do we have to have a new conversation instead of pointing fingers and saying, you're better than me because you're a vegan, you're bad because you eat meat, or you're good because you eat meat, and you're bad because you're eating all of these plant-based, synthetic processed alternatives, and instead say, what are we all trying to achieve no matter what choice we make? That's more transparency, more traceability, higher levels of nutrition, better empowerment of farmers. Those are the goals, no matter what technology toolkit we choose to adopt to use. Regenerative, organic, biotech. If we can all be looking towards those objectives that we want to achieve, we can make technology work in service of those, instead of, again, pointing fingers about I'm better than you or your food choices are better than mine.
Totally. We often get into a place where there's this paradigm of what's going to win, and it can feel competitive within the industry. However, if we look at nature, a diversity of solution exists, and we want biodiversity. We want diversity of thought and ideas and solutions and choices, so it makes perfect sense along the way. I want to anchor us now in the moments we have left to really talk about what our friends in the audience can do in terms of how they can make decisions around their plate from your point of view in helping us to shift to this food system. So I'll just go down the line. I'll start with you, Christine. What do you think our audience members can and should do to use the power of their plate?
Well, I think it's really about empowering yourself, educating yourself, and connecting yourself with people. The plate has always been something that has convened human beings, right? Like in history, it was the table that brought people together. It's where big discussions were held, philosophical discussions, religious discussions, family discussions. And I think the power of your plate is about you and your choices, but it's about bringing people together. And I do want to call out like a couple of people that I think if you have the time to come and meet, we have the leaders from a community called Imagine here in the audience today. Imagine is, a group of people, a collective, focused on creating impact at scale. And I think it's really interesting when you bring people with diverse thinking, again, who care about this shared outcome together over a meal. You can do big things. Another great friend of mine runs the social gastronomy movement, and they're all about, again, having this universal plate experience. So find these types of organizations, share a meal with someone, and share a meal with someone who thinks differently than you. Talk about how the food got to the plate, why they chose what they're eating, and really approach that conversation with an open and curious mind and without judgment. Because you saw, I have my I Love GMO sticker. You might judge me as a corporate shill, but once you get to know me, you might find that we have so much more in common about what we're trying to do for people and the planet. So that's my advice.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Should we just close here? No.
Yeah, should I
just
just leave in shame?
What would you say is the power of the consumers?
I think consumers are really a key to change, because industry, unfortunately, it's driven by money, and this money comes from we consumers. And then the real change, it would happen when consumers decide to do not buy bad products. So then industry have no choice to change. They change products, they reformulate it, and unfortunately, that's how the real change will be. If we be responsible and mindful of what we're doing, what we're buying today, is going to transform the human beings that we're going to be tomorrow. That's so important. And it goes in this perspective of reconnecting to food. If we reconnect more to food that we're eating, we're conscious of what we're eating. So we don't want to eat things that are bad for our health. I think nobody wants to have diseases or have a worse health because of food. And food is directly connected with our health. It's our first medicine. I think we forgot how nature can give us all the nutrients and good things that we need for a good health. So then we need to act actively and pay attention and have a mindful consuming of products, and cook more, and don't be afraid of vegetables, of cooking. They're amazing, they're colorful. And yeah, if we do a bad recipe, it's okay. We try it again, and then we will cook more and more, and then we get better. We need to reconnect and try and make mistakes, but we need to try a bit more mindful of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I want to build on that, because on Wednesday I went out to visit Hector, which is a big agricultural campus about 1 hour outside of Paris. And I was learning that in Bordeaux, they're ripping out the vines because in France, the wine culture of young people is disappearing. People are choosing beer instead. So when I think of France, I go, what? A world without Bordeaux? Like, I can't even imagine and fathom that. But there's a bit of eating what you love, eating what you want to preserve, eating things that make you proud of your culture, but also being clear about the power of your question. So when you go to a restaurant, are you asking them, where did this come from? How was this made? Many times, even people working in hospitality do not know the answer and they have to go find out. But if enough people start asking questions, it builds awareness, and then we all start becoming more aware and wondering, and that changes how the sourcing happens. So your questions are powerful just as much as your choices and where you choose to align where you're eating and what you're buying in the grocery stores. Same when you go up to the farmers. If you go to the farmer's market, asking them, how is this grown? Tell me about how you cultivate it. If they see people care, it's gonna start shifting things, and you're gonna feel that too. I pass it to you.
Yeah, I actually really love what Christine said, and this is something I've been thinking more philosophically and personally also, and really like what in Beyond Impact we say, that accelerating the transition to blah, 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 but the most important piece is, I would say, kindness. If we cannot appreciate other people, why they are doing it, and empathize with that, we cannot have dialogues. And actually what we have reached to this stage is basically because people who wanted to have change also were unkind to people who don't want to change. But we need to understand also why they don't want to change. And also a bit of an appreciation around why this food system was built. Also that gave a decent amount of empowerment to a lot of Western women, that you can go out and work also because you have these ready-made cooked meals. So again, we can debate about that. That was wrong, and we can transform it in a much better way. But let's have kindness first. And the second most important piece I feel like is we need to also understand this is culture changes, and we have the power to change the culture. And historically, if you go back how Japan's Edo period, nobody touched meat. It was just seafood, and Okinawa diet was almost everything was plant-based. And it shifted to something. And I believe that if we come together, have better dialogues, we can shift to a better culture. So I would actually argue that culture is not constant. Culture evolves. And as a collective consciousness, how we let this culture evolve is most important piece of the puzzle that we should resolve.
Absolutely, and I think a key part of moving towards a kinder food system is going to be measuring something beyond just profitability. So even looking at when you're spending your dollar, I know the culture in my household growing up, my dad grew up really poor on a farm in southern Denmark, and he to this day counts his pennies. He's like, it goes back into the, I'm gonna buy the cheaper thing on sale, and I'm like, your daughter works in food. Like at this point, we have to be buying better. Like what is it gonna take to shift this? Decades, a lot of time going into this space, but it's what it takes in terms of changing those habits, changing that culture, changing what you value into I'm actually thinking about the kindness. I'm thinking about the value in the other regards of the water, the air, the soil, all these other things that we value so much. So thank you guys. Amazing conversation. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Go ahead.